Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the social media pages, including facebook.com/Talk El Paso, and other various pages, including YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, most of those at Talk El Paso, which is Twitter and YouTube, or Andrew J. Polk over on Twitch, because that's just how that name works. But point being, a lot of ways you can interact with the show, even while we're gearing up for those calls, because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about in the meantime. We will take those calls towards the bottom of the hour, as we usually do. But in the meantime, there has been a very just busy news day around town here. So to talk a little bit more about that and set up some of these subjects and topics that we have going on at this moment here, we are joined now by Chris Babcock with KTSM-TV. Chris, thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me back, Andrew. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so it was pretty busy day around news gathering here. We don't usually delve into it, but this was a serious one of a couple of schools on lockdown in an area of Northeast, as well as kind of a citywide manhunt.
Yeah, we got tipped off right about 9 o'clock that YISD over in Northeast El Paso had to lock down the Parkland area schools, Parkland Middle, Parkland Pre-K, and Parkland High School, as there was a credible threat from someone from outside the school against some students. And when they did that, they were able to figure out pretty quickly that it wasn't at the middle school, so they went ahead and reopened that. But both the pre-K and the high school stayed in lockdown pretty much throughout the day, all the way till the early afternoon.
So that was a pretty serious set of incidents going on there, frankly, because, I mean, all of that, this is nothing to sneeze at when it comes to it, but the gentleman was finally found and arrested, and consider this contributing to, at least in our area, probably conversation on going about, because these threats were made on social media primarily, and we've certainly been having a lot of conversations about that lately.
Yeah, once again, you have, a young man, 23 years old, who already has a criminal history, and he allegedly made some threats against students. And part of the background that the police released, that they believed him to be armed and dangerous. And this went from Northeast El Paso all the way to the Far East Side. So they were talking about closing other schools and having to look for him. But thankfully, police, and law enforcement, helped out by the Border Patrol and CBP, were able to locate him and take him into custody. But these never end well for the hoaxsters or for the people who think that they're acting tough to make these threats, because they always get caught and they always get prosecuted. But it does seem here in the last few months, coming out of the pandemic, that we have had a little bit more of an epidemic, as it were, of people talking tough and trying to prove themselves. And it's really causing an inconvenience and unneeded fear throughout our city.
Yeah, at this point, there was no indication that anyone was ever actually in physical danger, gunmen present. But, I mean, this is why I have said obliquely at times that if you're going to commit crimes, maybe don't document it fully. And just putting it out there on social media is one of the dumbest things. But we've also seen, I would agree, kind of an increase in incidents, including a couple of times of people posting videos of them shooting guns going along streets. So there's just a lot of really dumb stuff that is just happening in this arena that can have very serious real-world consequences, if we've seen here today. So that's one part of an ongoing conversation that we're going to be continuing to talk in, as we have John Brazelton, Edgar Ortiz, and Leroy Chuck joining us over on the social media pages. John, let us know a little bit of an issue with the audio there. Let us know if it's fixed up at all. Should make a slight adjustment there, as we also have Edgar Ortiz wishing us a good day, and Leroy Chuck pointing out aren't all schools in El Paso quote-unquote gun-free zones, which is more or less accurate. But again, tangential, but not quite related to this one here, as it was primarily online threats as part of this here. But also do want to point out that we do have that election going on as well right now, both on the Texas and New Mexico side of things. New Mexico a little bit more hefty, but still some pretty serious stuff on the Texas side of things. But at the same time, we have had, by my calculation, about a 2% voter turnout as of the end of early voting on Friday.
Actually looking at closer to 2.6%. We did the math this morning. And given the seriousness of just the majority of the constitutional amendments here in Texas, it's very necessary for people to get out there and vote, because after these things are passed, you look up at them and you say, well, how'd this get through? Well, 2.6, 3% turnout, that's what's going to happen. And then on the fringes of the counties, you have the bonds that are going in for Canutillo. You have that going in on the other side of the state line for Gadsden.
Mm-hmm.
You also have the city alderman down in Socorro and Anthony. So there's still a lot of stuff. All politics starts local, and if you don't get involved there, it tends to kind of get out of control. And regardless of what side of the fence you fall on, you got to get out there, and you gotta let people know where you stand as far as your vote is concerned. Do you want to have the school districts issue these types of bonds? Do you want the state of Texas looking over, keeping an eye on the number of people that go visit you at the old folks home?
Mm-hmm.
It's all these types of things that need to be voted on.
Yeah, and all this, and again, 8 constitutional amendments. So wherever you're in Texas hearing this, you've got something on the ballot, and then those other specific ones. But doing it, just a whole lot of stuff on either side of the state line here. So again, either epcountyvotes.com for those in Texas, or visit the Doña Ana County Clerks if you're within the Las Cruces area in general, or your county clerk's website to find that listing on the ballot, because there's a lot on there, and a lot of particularly concerning stuff when it comes to like a lot of public utility stuff here. That's not on the ballot here in Texas, but we have been having some ongoing issues and increased response having to have with a public utility here in El Paso. El Paso Water now looking to have to potentially divert part of the Rio Grande to deal with some serious ongoing issues that have been brought up a couple of times by our listeners with sewage being drained into it.
Yeah, more of the same, and they're moving into the next stage of treatment of the water and making sure it doesn't continue to pollute the Rio Grande. Of course, we already have the sedimentary waste that was in there from earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're having to capture river water, process it, and then send it back into the river, which is a little bit redundant. But considering what they're having to do to remediate it, it's very necessary considering what we send downstream. It's just a very, very, very important thing to do.
Again, just to connect it to another recent event, everything that was going on in Del Rio and the people crossing there, that's, of course, downstream from us. Now, I'm not technically like an ecologist, can tell you exactly if what was coming out here had made it down there, but the possibility was forefront in my mind as I was watching those videos. So just to connect it to a different major event that's happened recently, it's still pretty serious and needs to be dealt with. A couple other things I want to mention before we let you go here, Chris, as we're talking with Chris Babcock with KTSM-TV, is that a couple of statewide and national stories percolating through it now. We had those Supreme Court arguments that were before, about SB 8 before the justices here today. A decision being expedited, so probably not have to wait till the end of the session there. That's one major one. But then another one is an interesting poll that has come out today, being reported on decently widely about that potential gubernatorial race. The Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation and Rice University pitting, at least potentially, Governor Greg Abbott against Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, and finding it within the margin of error, which is beginning a lot of headlines today.
And that's pretty much where it stood for the past month and a half. I mean, without any true competition across the aisle, he is the default leader of the opposition at this point, and it is within the margin of error. So it's significantly down for Abbott as far as his public popularity is. But you would expect Beto to be right around the 40s, so that's where he's always been. But again, it depends going into November, December. That time gets really close. I mean, the general election is coming up. I know we've got an election tomorrow. We're looking at March, and then we're already looking at is that going to necessitate a runoff on the Republican side? Is there going to be somebody else coming in, Democrats? So really, while that plus or minus really shows how close it is, I don't think we've really gotten to the meat of it until we have a declared candidate or two, and then we'll see how it shuffles out.
Yeah, again, that's the kind of interesting situation where we'll talk more about that coming back out of the break here. But right now I've been talking with Chris Babcock with KTSM-TV about some of the big stories going on and coming up here to set up our week. So thanks for joining us, Chris, as you do most starts of the week.
Thanks so much, Edward. You guys have a great week.
Absolutely here. So coming up on the need for that break right now, and getting more into those topics we just mentioned there, because there's a whole lot of stuff going on and a whole lot we need to keep going into. So I already have some response on that here, as we do have Calvin Williams, Louis Pinato, John Braslin, and Jeffrey Schmidt, and more tuning in. Leroy Chuck a little bit earlier, and Edgar Ortiz. So we're going to get into all that, more of those comments, and more coming back out of this break. So stay tuned for more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Comment right now on the social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We'll be back here shortly with more of the discussion on some of those other big issues. Stay tuned. In having these discussions about these big issues, you may think like, all right, I need to be a not low energy person, to put it one way. And one thing I do to keep the energy up and be able to stay focused on these discussions, talk about them clearly and not get muddled in the details, is drinking clever tea. Frankly, it's something that I reach for. I mean, I've done the whole sugary sodas, caffeinated things, yada, yada, that always just leave me crashing and not happy at, the tail end of that experience, which happens way too soon. So while I like clever teas, because A, it's got a pretty decent caffeine kick and helps you feel focused, but it's not that kind of sugar rush that you get from other sources, and actually helps me get through the day there. Getting it from myself, from Marco, and then again, that's clevertea.com, KLEVRT.com is their website, but they'll be out in the community here this coming weekend as well. They'll be out at the Hotel Paso del Norte in the morning on Saturday, and then on Sunday, they'll be at the Upper Valley Artisan Market around midday through early afternoon. So search for them there and ask them about the $6.90 deal where you can get a bottle free when you buy 3, but otherwise just make sure to support local in most things you do. I try to anyway, so you can find them again online at clevertea.com. That's KLEVRT.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
There's some heavy traffic on the Loop 375 southbound between Doniphan and Desert Boulevard. Also look out for an accident on Dyer Street northbound at Mcconaughey. You could try taking Railroad and Deer Avenue to get by. And there's a medical emergency that could cause some delays on Lee Trevino Drive southbound at Pelicano. George Dieter and Rojas Drive are your alternates here. I'm Marae Jourdain with traffic.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
Your life, your hopes, and whatever you were searching for at 1:15 a.m. It's really none of our business, and it shouldn't be anyone else's. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
If you don't own a home, you have nothing to fear from home title thieves. But if you own a home like me and you don't guard it with Home Title Lock, you're inviting home title fraud, one of the fastest growing crimes. Cyber thieves around the world know our home values are sky high, and that makes us a target. The crime is scary simple. A cyber thief simply forges your name on a property sale form and refiles it. Now he's on the deed to your home, and you have no idea you're a victim. Then he takes out loans on your home and vanishes, leaving you to prove to the police that you didn't commit bank fraud. Home Title Lock puts a virtual barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect tampering, they help shut it down. Look, if you have equity in your home, guard it with your life. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. And enter radio for 30 days of free protection. That's code radio at HometitleLock.com.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, including some of those local pressing issues, including literal, well, I can't use the word I want to, but bad stuff elimination in the river, among other things. But we also have, again, that election going on that I really hope you voted in, or I hope you can feel my ire through the radio there, or however you're listening, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or over on these social pages, where we do have Jeffrey Schmidt, John Brazelton, Louis Pinato, Edgar Ortiz, Calvin Williams, Leroy Chuck a little bit earlier, and more. So a lot of stuff we're talking about here today. So we're taking those comments over there on those various social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, as well as be opening up those phone lines here in just a minute. Stay tuned for that, as we normally do. But so let's get a little bit more in depth. We just mentioned it kind of at the end of the segment there. Talk a little bit more about that poll, again, from the Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation and Rice University, within the Abbott 43%, O'Rourke at 42%, along with a Libertarian candidate at 2% overall and a Green Party candidate at 1%. Notably, the four-person ballot did not include a well-known actor of course, Matthew McConaughey. All right, who's, yeah, I'm dubious about that actually materializing. I don't know. I feel like in most major elections lately, some celebrity gets thrown up, ever since the Governator, really, is what it comes down to for me. When we had the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, good old Ernie, on the ballot, I feel like that opened the field for consideration of that, which, okay, if you like an actor, fine, that's great, but you realize that on-screen personas usually don't translate out into, policy positions, but who am I to care about who gets elected here? So a lot of response to that possibility, though, including Jeffrey Smith saying that Beto is a rock star doofus, I think is what you're trying to say there, and some questions about current employment status from Edgar Ortiz and John Brazelton, bringing up that, there have been a few notable runs lately. Frankly, I think there was some bad advice going on there. At the very least, whatever you thought about the Senate run was one of the better showings that Democrats have seen statewide in recent history, anyway. But that didn't exactly scale nationally. And, of course, there were other statements. I really don't think that the impact of hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s, your AK-47s, has registered when it comes to the actual ballot here. And, of course, we've had the whole issues with political polling in the last half decade that makes me not willing to bet on anything at this point, at least personally here. So that's a set of issues. But, again, McConaughey not being on the poll, but there was a 5-person ballot, which showed him getting 9% of registered voters here. So I fully expect that unless McConaughey gets a real wild hair up his that he will just end up being supporting of probably O'Rourke. That's my expectation, to look in my really cloudy crystal ball here. Leroy Chuck pointed that most politicians are good actors. Fair enough, touche on that. But at the same time, you don't see me. I really wish we'd stop making stupid people famous, is what I really think. What the core concern for me comes down to, because there's a lot of people who are famous or actors or other things that are there not because they have any good thoughts in their head. They just happen to have a particular skill that translates well into media entertainment and therefore makes them a lot of money, and then yada, whole fame factory and all that stuff. That no way, shape, or form of any of those qualifications then hold public office. I would almost like there to be an entrance exam to be able to do that, but that there's no way that could be implemented cleanly or accurately or good without just becoming a whole other fight, another tool coming into it. So I'll agree with you on that point here, but I'm going to be personally disappointed if we don't hear some kind of concrete announcement, at the very least within this month. Because one thing that it's almost undeniable that previous O'Rourke campaigns have had problems with, particularly the last presidential one, which had its own overall issues, is a serious bad timing issue of actually finally making the announcement and then following through with it. So at a certain point here, you got to just pick your moment. And if you're going to wait until like closer to March next year, we're fully in the campaign season now. If anyone was at all confused or unsure about that, the campaign is on. We have talked with candidates for most of the top level statewide offices just on this program alone over this past 6 months. So I was considering, still kind of trickling in the early birds starting to wake up and, catch the electoral attention worms, but it's on now. Just make no mistake about that. We even have an election going on right now, but the campaign is fully on. We got reporting going on about campaign finance amounts. So I just got to wonder who's advising on the timeline here, because if you really want to see this run happen, what the heck is being waited on? Unless there's some dark horse thing going on, but I would be very surprised about that, because the hell are we doing? One of the other major ones that I wanted to bring up here is also Joey Carlson, not happy with it, saying only local moronic libs would fall for his rhetoric. I mean, he's run for city council, but having lost that focus with his current races going national with the congressional race, which again, pointed out, did win a couple of times, but that success hasn't exactly translated, is pretty apparent. Anyway, also Joey Carlson pointing out a pretty obvious thing about El Paso and its voting. Anyway, point being that this race, he's got to either get into it or not, but we'll see in the meantime. But the other one that I wanted to bring up that we mentioned briefly in the last segment, that of the Supreme Court case, the arguments being heard before the justices about Texas's SB 8, of which a lot of column inches, of course, and airtime has been devoted to lately. A lot of the analysis that I'm seeing coming in from places like the Texas Tribune, our news partners, other national outlets, pointing out the questioning going on from certain justices, because, of course, the timeline to this point, besides the passage of the bill, has been that of what is going on with the actual questioning, since we won't know the decision. The kind of only having sat in on Supreme Court cases myself in the past, that's the only kind of there's not really a litmus test you can give at that point in time, because there might be some questioning they do, tends to maybe show the hand a little bit, but not generally. So a lot of focus being put on that there were 6 justices who are being questioning some of the enforcement mechanisms, which has been one of my primary concerns. Whatever you think about the core issue here, it almost doesn't seem like, based on the questioning, that will be at issue in this particular case. Now, there are other cases from other states coming on the core issue of abortion, which stirs a lot of people up, absolutely. My primary concern has been on that enforcement mechanism of the private individuals suing, because that's a novel approach that was pretty much intended to get around the federal response that has previously come, because, and maybe this is a little bit of laziness on the federal response in previous years anyway, the way that things have been overturned by the Supreme Court has usually been to block enforcement of laws. Then therefore they no longer enforceable, may not as well not exist. We had some discussion about that previously this year when it came to some of the COVID mandates. Like, sure, they are quote unquote mandates, but if they're not actually enforceable and nothing can be done with them, do they actually exist? Kind of a tree falling in the forest, does anyone care kind of question is what it comes down to. So that seems to be what the justices are focused on. The real issue is, when will the decision come down? Because it has been widely noted that there was no stop or stay of the actual implementation of the law, as was being desired by opponents of it. But at the same time, this may not wait until the end of the session either, as usually happens. If you pay attention to it, the running of the interns moment, when the actual, I believe it's printed out versions of the decisions are put out there, and then the interns for all the various legal and news concerns go to rush to grab them, then bring them back to their producers. May not wait for that moment either. So probably won't come out today is what is being widely expected, but maybe within the next week or so, which will be a very fast turnaround for the Supreme Court. So that's another one that's being watched on and focused on here. And Joey Carlson saying Adam West needs the primary. Abbott, I think you mean Alan West, unless you're talking about the actor who, if I'm not mistaken, I never really keep up with celebrity gossip, but did he pass? I think he may have. I'll look that up here. But I think that's another point not on this particular recent election poll. Here is, what about opponents to Abbott? Just kind of assuming that Abbott would be the candidate versus the most, again, at this point, likely Democrat candidate, the one that has the most attention outside of McConaughey, who it's not even clear if it would there. Brazelton saying that Alan West will make a great governor, probably doesn't have a big enough political base in Texas to overcome Abbott. That has been a reasonable criticism because, of course, Alan West, not previously Texas-based outside of the recent few years, coming in, I believe, from Florida is where he lived previously, to then become the chair of the Republican Party of Texas and then vacating that seat early in order to do this gubernatorial run. So, I mean, this is all happening, including Alan West, the other couple of Don Huffines, the guy in the cowboy hat and a truck. Literally, that's part of his branding as himself as a candidate. I'll look his name up here in a minute, but it escapes me at the moment. All of this coming from, frankly, the vulnerability seen in Abbott over those COVID mandates, among other things, and the things that happened over the course of 2020, seeing some daylight potential by these opponents between Abbott and his base. But Abbott it's unwise to underestimate him politically, particularly when it comes to, I mean, other things like his war chest. So we'll talk more about that after this break here. We're going to open up those phone lines and talk more about it. That number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. So call in. We'll take those comments and calls after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Whatever you're doing to go about your day, you need to make sure you have in mind what to do if you end up with those serious day disruptors. You know, those accidents about the home, or as people are getting more and more into the workspace and the office, anywhere on the road or in between, you might find yourself with things that don't require you to get in an ambulance, but really can't make it so you can go about your day here. Your aches, your scrapes, your sprains, your breaks, bruises, sniffles, coughs, just feeling bad, the stuff that doesn't let you keep going on with what's on the schedule and, of course, doesn't happen on your schedule. So you need to know where to go, whatever time it is, 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. over at Upper Valley Urgent Care Center. They'll take care of you, able to handle most minor medical emergencies, including x-ray capabilities, and they are a VA-authorized urgent care provider. So for that major community in our town, it's another resource you can turn to. So find them at 121 East Red Road, just west of I-10 and Red Road. So it's an easy access to for wherever you're coming from. What I trust myself and my family to when we have those serious situations that we cannot continue with our day about. So find them. And again, celebrating the 15th anniversary this fall, Upper Valley Urgent Care Center.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hi, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. Police were on the lookout for an armed 23-year-old man in Northeast El Paso. That search prompted Parkland High School and Parkland Pre-K to go on lockdown this morning. El Paso police were looking for Pablo Isaac Paredes, who's accused of making a threat on social media toward a female student at Parkland High School. He was arrested without incident several hours later. The city of El Paso's 10 senior centers will reopen today for full operations. After months of partial operations due to the pandemic, the senior centers have reopened in phases, going from 1 day a week to 2 days a week until reaching a full reopen today. In regards to health protocols, the city says they will be following some protocols but are placing the responsibility on the individuals. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
There's some traffic to look out for on the 10 westbound between Mesa and Thorne Avenue. Also, there's still some heavy traffic on Zaragoza northbound between Harris and Vista del Sol. And there's an accident on Dyer Street northbound at McCombs. You could try taking Railroad and Deer Avenue to get by. And look out for another collision on Yarborough Drive just north of Edgemere Boulevard. I'm Marae Jourdain, and that's traffic.
It was a warm start to the month of November, and above average temperatures will continue for the next couple of days. Tonight, expect a few clouds across our sky along with lighter winds. Temperatures will also cool to near 50 degrees in El Paso to the mid-40s in Las Cruces. Coming up tonight, I'll have the timing of this week's cold front, plus the weather changes it'll bring by the end of the week. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Lowe's Provember event is back, and they're thanking pros like you all month long with top values on pro brands like DeWalt and Spyder, online or in stores through November 24th. Lowe's, the new home for pros, U.S. only.
Listen, could Robert change your life?
At the age of 55, I started putting on weight, and I got to the weight of about 210 pounds. Always hungry. The heavier I got, the less energy I had. And about 6 months ago, I started taking the Andro 400, and I started realizing I had more energy. I felt better, and my mind was clearer, and I started losing weight. I went from my max weight was 215, and now I'm down to 176. My waist size has dropped from a 38 to a 32, and I've lost these big love handles I had on my side, and I just look a lot slimmer.
Since 2004, Andro 400 has helped men lose belly fat, gain energy, and to look and feel their best. Go to andro400.com for more true testimonials, before and after photos, and special discounts. Only available on andro400.com. andro400.com.
Are you covered by Medicare and Medicaid? Well, El Paso Health Plus is the plan for you. As a local Medicare Advantage plan, we can offer our members more. Call us at 833-742-3125 or ephmedicare.com. El Paso Health Plus.
Your life, your hopes, and whatever you were searching for at 1:15 a.m. It's really none of our business, and it shouldn't be anyone else's. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
This report is sponsored by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy for free with DuckDuckGo.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Whatever you're doing to make sure you stay on top of the latest medical innovations, or if you're not doing that, a good way to start is by tuning in to the Medical Hackers with Dr. Sandeep Rao, board-certified vascular interventionalist, because he takes on what the currents are within the medical system to help you navigate all of its latest innovations and just the complex nature of it with those healthcare hacks in the positive sense, as in tools or ways you can use to get through all of it, because I've never heard anyone that has said, you know what's really simple these days? Healthcare. Even a baby can get through it. No, you need to know what you're doing and advocate for yourself, frankly. So this is another way you can do so by tuning in again Saturdays at noon. Also, submit your own questions by emailing rao@medicalhackers.com. Again, RAO@medicalhackers.com. And again, be sure to tune in this coming Saturday at noon, right after the El Paso History Radio Show here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages, including facebook.com/Talk El Paso, Twitter at Talk El Paso, YouTube, the Talk El Paso channel, or on Twitch at Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways we're putting it out there because we want to have this discussion, and we got so much time, squeeze in as many calls, but the conversation continues, particularly over on the Facebook page. That's where the Skeptic Squad lives. You'll be hard-pressed to find anyone agreeing with anyone, which is why I cherish those moments so deeply. But the discussion is usually robust, is the way I like to refer to it anyway, as we have Calvin Williams, Edgar Ortiz, Michael Pattis, John Brazelton, Leroy Chuck, Joey Carlson, and a few more. Jeffrey Smith a little bit earlier chiming in there. Also, just got to say, got a very interesting call during the break right now that may lead to some further coverage of this upcoming election. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I do have to mention Talk El Paso, brought to you in part by Monterey Asset Management. If you're tired of the ups and downs in the stock market, consider investing in real estate. Monterey manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. Check out their new website, m1ep.com. That's m1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation of investing in real estate, you can call certified property manager Ray at 915-592-4549. That's 915-592-4549. Thank you to our sponsors. Please support them as they support us on our mission to bring live local talk radio back to the borderland, because I think we deserve it. But also, as a note there on the call, we do have those area codes in effect now. So we had a mention there, someone was having difficulty getting through at the end of last week. So, if you're calling into the show, our number right now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We'll be doing more talk here as we have some anticipation about the calls going on right now. We'll get some more of them here in just a second. But yeah, we do have that area code in effect in our area. So, if you are expecting to get through to any of those 915 area code numbers, be sure to dial the area code. So, again, number for our show here, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. If you got the, is it old school now? The old school T9? Ugh. Anyway, a lot of stuff we're talking about and a lot of phrases. I might get into that a little bit later this week. That particular phrase that has come up, the Let's Go Brandon, but that's a whole nother rant that I don't want to take time away from now, because we do have callers on the line. Right now we do have Raul in the Northeast on the line. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, that Skeptic Squad over there on the Facebook page, they're pretty much all in the same choir. They're singing to each other. Pretty much Trumpers, most of them out there.
I mean, yes and no, I got to say. There's a surprising amount of discord that happens even within what you would think would be agreeable political positions, meaning that the discussion's always interesting is the way I will put it.
Yeah, well, it's way out there. So I saw a poll that Greg Abbott is in a virtual time with Beto O'Rourke for the governor's race.
Yep, within the margin of error.
That would be a good thing for Beto to be, someone from El Paso to be the governor. I think he's a much better person than Greg Abbott. And something else, you guys were talking about education last week, public education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really ought to be a national priority, and it ought to be paid by through federal income taxes. They could calculate how much a world-class education would cost, what it would look like, and then tax people's incomes accordingly and progressively. And yet, as you know, public education is not in the Constitution. It is not considered a human right by conservatives, just like health care insurance isn't either. And back in the day, education, especially higher education, was only for the elite few, the well-fed, the well-read, the well-read, basically rich white Protestant men. And as the country was growing from east to west, states took on the job of educating children to draw businesses to their communities by having an educated and skilled workforce, and then trying to produce productive citizens by hopefully providing students with the skills to hold down a job and succeed in a career. So as you know, schools are funded by taxes paid by homeowners and business owners, and they are allocated in relation to the tax base of those homes surrounding the schools. So the rich kids have a better, nicer schools. Education is inequitable, just like society and the economy is at large. And rich people send their kids to private schools and religious schools. They don't want their kids mixing with the riffraff. And the private schools have the luxury of not having to accept everyone and not having to keep anyone. So investing in kids' education is the best investment a society could make, a government could make, because in the long run, it pays off big time for everybody. My parents used to wish they'd get a public school tax credit for the amount that they spent on my little sisters and my tuition to go to Catholic grade and high schools. And they weren't rich, just middle-class professionals, and wish they could have gotten that tax break. But nonetheless, I would have disagreed with them on that policy. Everybody needs to pay for it, and everybody deserves a world-class education, and we are failing so miserably in that area, as in so many others. Thank you.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point there. I mean, the whole school voucher and school choice issue has been referred to as the civil rights issue of our age. Not sure I agree with that characterization of it, but I mean, the one point I'll definitely agree with you on there is the idea that having education and an educated populace is a major factor of economic growth, because the whole I've been railing a lot against reductive reasoning lately, both in my personal, professional, and electoral life, that, well, if you just cut more, that'll mean better for the long term, is something I have been finding myself unhappy with the idea of, because at a certain point, if you invest in things, I think that's part of the consternation that comes with the bill that is being featured nationally right now that we heard at the top of the hour, the conversation about what's going on with the infrastructure bills that really are two separate ones. One is literal, physical, traditional idea of infrastructure, but then there's also the component about its social infrastructure that's being put forth that encompasses a lot of what you referred to there. I think that they keep getting tripping on their own shoelaces when it comes to national Democrats on that. And if they really want to they need to get something done. Otherwise, they're going to take a shellacking at the ballot box when it comes to, well, that campaign, we're already in here. So if they really want to see anything happen, they need to get off their butts and pass at least one of them, even if Manchin and Cinema are going to be the flies in the ointment for them, or at least the ones that get blamed for it. There's other structural things going on there. And of course, not much consideration for those across the aisle at this point. So reductive in its own way, as I mentioned here. Let's try to take one more call here quickly before we hit the break. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Tony Westside. How you doing?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
Listen, you don't have to be a psychologist to detect mental illness, okay? That previous caller talks about how only rich white Protestant males went to private school, and then he admits that he went to private school himself. I mean, what a dork. That guy is just a one-trick pony, man. Sicko. But let me tell you this. The rest of you, let me tell you this. Whatever you hear, always remember your faith and stick to your Bible, your Lord, the good moral teachings from the Lord. Anytime you're in the majority, anytime you count on the government instead of God, you're on the wrong side. Anytime you want the government to solve your health issues, your financial issues, your social issues, your whatever issues, you're already on the wrong side. So don't listen to that kook from the Northeast. He contradicts himself. He spittles and spattles. Forget him.
I mean, I think that you have a fair point there about relying on other things. I mean, a phrase that lives rent-free in my head is that a government which has the power to give you everything also has the power to take everything from you. I have enough concern when it comes to issues like, civil asset forfeiture and eminent domain, much less when it comes to basic needs and necessities, which, again, setting up of systems and reliances on it just gives me a lot of pause at the very least here. Got the need for a break coming up again right now. Got a few more calls in the line, a lot of comments going on, including Dottie Butler-Torres, Michael Perez, Joey Carlson, Leroy Chuck, and more. We'll get more of those comments and get more calls. The number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after the break with more. Talk El Paso. It may no longer be October, but local El Paso-based Therapeutics and Thermography, Inc., which you can find at 935 Sunland Park Drive inside Biometrics, the blue sign that's right on the west side of I-10 and Sunland Park. They're extending their offer of $50 off all breast thermograms through the end of the year. So you can still claim that for yourself. And again, even though the month may be over, the focus on your health and taking care of it should not end. So you can give them a call at 915-401-4053. That's again, 915-401-4053 to get your $50 off. Claim that for yourself. Set up your appointment to do thermography, which is another technique that can help register, track, and even do early detection of disease or other bodily issues. So specifically, again, offering those breast thermograms in support of the cause of breast cancer awareness and early detection, 915-401-4053, or find them online at elpasothermography.com. That's El Paso, TheRmography.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
There's still some heavy traffic on Paisano Drive northbound between Boone and Santa Fe Street. Also look out for an accident on Mesa Street northbound at Sunland Park. And there's another collision that could cause some delays on Yarborough Drive just north of Edgemere Boulevard. Also, the connecting roadway is closed on the 10 westbound at Patriot Freeway. I'm Marie Jourdain, and that's traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. During Lowe's Provember event, new members of their Pro Loyalty program get a welcome kit via mail, and every member gets a chance to win amazing prizes. Provember, now through November 24th. Lowe's, the new home for pros.
Hey folks, this is Andrew J. Polk. As the days get shorter, you don't want to get caught in the spooky situation of not knowing where to go to get quality medical care and services when you need it. From the routine to minor medical emergencies, my go-to is Dr. Alan Carpenter and his team at Upper Valley Urgent Care Center. From shots and testing to aches, sprains, breaks, and the rest of the unplanned parts of your day, they're at the ready with walk-ins accepted 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week at 121 East Red Road. Celebrating their 15th anniversary this fall, Upper Valley Urgent Care Center.
Hi, this is Rick from the Air Conditioning Company. How would you like to save $15,000 or more on your refrigerated air system? The Air Conditioning Company can help you do that. An improperly installed unit can cost you thousands and shorten the life of your equipment. Act now and get the best prices of the year on your AC and furnaces. Let our expert tech put money back in your pocket. Call 842-8615 today or log on to theairconditioningcompanyllc.com. The Air Conditioning Company. We love our company. License number 26622E.
What happens if we find the home we want, but somebody else just got to it quicker? What if we can't sell our existing home on time and we get stuck with 2 mortgages? I know. I've been there, and I have a solution. Listen carefully. You just need to call Brian Birds of eXp Realty. He'll guarantee your home will sell on time, or he's going to buy it himself. You'll get the home you want, and you don't have to worry about getting stuck with a burden of 2 mortgages. Hundreds of home sellers and renters trust Brian, and you can trust him as well. Connect personally with Brian today at 751-1500. That's 751-1500. Or go to brianbirds.com. That's Brian, BURDS.com.
Hey, El Paso, have you heard? Sell your home guarantee. Call Brian Birds. Go to brianbirds.com.
Your life, your hopes, and whatever you were searching for at 1:15 a.m., it's really none of our business, and it shouldn't be anyone else's. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
Monterey Asset Management, superior multifamily property management services citywide.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, brought to you in part by a bunch of our sponsors, including the Air Conditioning Company. I know that we're dealing with the nice part of the temperatures of the year. Haven't had to use my AC for a minute here, or the heater. happy about that. House is decently enough insulated, I guess, because we haven't seen those dips. But what we call winter is coming before you know it. So just think about your comfort level, particularly how it was in the previous years, and if you are happy with that, or even from these summer systems, because, of course, now is the time to do all those kind of repairs and also beat the rush, because as soon as we start seeing those real dips and temperatures start flirting with those freezes, you know people are going to be calling and ringing off the hook there. But you can call the air conditioning company, walk in some of the best prices of the year right now by calling 915-842-8615, 915-842-8615, or log on to airconditioningcompanyllc.com. That's airconditioningcompanyllc.com. So, a lot of ways to support those who support our show, frankly, and we appreciate all of them. But a lot of stuff we're talking about here today, as well as we have a lot of conversation, including Kathy Cordy joining us over on the Facebook page, Dottie Butler Torres, Michael Pettis, Joey Carlson, and more over on the Facebook page. Again, we put it out in all these places to have that conversation. And you know, we might just make that the topic tomorrow about that whole "let's go blank" chant, because I'm a little bit baffled by some of the response happening to it, but maybe we'll get into that another day here. But getting to those calls on the line to close out the show. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Remember, you got to include that 915 these days from wherever you're calling, even if it's local, because, well, that's the systems we've got in place now. But so getting to those calls right now, we do have Andrew on the west side there. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. It should be of concern, and people need to get out and vote, but it should be of concern, Beto running for governor. This is a guy who wants to ban your guns, not just so-called assault weapons. This guy will come for your guns, make no mistake about it. He supports the elimination of bail sentences, in other words, requiring money to be released from jail. Also, he is for open borders. Remember, he said he'd tear down the wall. Also, he supports legalizing marijuana, opposes a death penalty, and this is a guy that claims to have benefited from white privilege. However, wasn't white privilege. He just was born into a wealthy family. But make no mistake, Beto O'Rourke is a far left politician, and he will come after your guns, and you'll have unfettered immigration. Him supporting unfettered immigration into this country. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, even though he's not on the ballot, has not announced it at this point, it is important to point out that he has quite the track record and quite a list of public statements that he has made already at this point. If the campaign ever comes at this point, some people expecting any day now, I got to really wonder, seriously, it's a timing issue for all of these successive campaigns, but maybe that's just me. In the meantime, I mean, vote what's important to you, and please go out and vote. We do have early voting over, but Election Day is tomorrow, so you can vote most places. I mean, check out where you can vote, epcountyvotes.com on the Texas side of things, and should be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And just remember, if you're online when the polls close, you are still able to vote. And you will be one of the few voting, because we've had that just shy of, I would be surprised if we hit 3% voter turnout, maybe 5% this whole election, which means at least I can stop shouting 3%, but still, these are constitutional amendments, at least on the Texas side. I think I could go on this for hours, so I'll try to get to at least a couple more calls here. We do have Jerry in Northwest County. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call. I want to address something that was put out by, I believe it was the Energy Secretary, and then it's being repeated by a lot of the media about the COVID and the workers not working during the COVID season. Right. Well, in the place I worked, that was a lie, because we were considered critical workers so that we could get the fuel out to the places. Your ambulances don't run on batteries yet. Never do your fire trucks or police cars. They still use gas. So that was one of the things that I disagreed with them, and they're lying to you. The second thing is that only rich people send their kids to private or religious school. I made less than $25,000 a year. I sent 2 children to private religious school for more than 10 years because the schools that we're here in the local area were not teaching a proper information about our own nation. And there was a lot of gang activity in the location that I was living at the time. So that other individual is wrong.
Fair enough. Thank you for bringing up those points there. I think they're important ones to consider. I mean, yeah, I think there's maybe some structural issues still coming out of the pandemic, but it's undeniable that particularly this administration has made its energy priorities pretty clear, at least before this point. And now that we got, as you mentioned there, a rubber hitting the road kind of situation with critical infrastructure, they got to do something or they're going to be sunk with a ballot box. Even if we're not in our community, I think we'll be decently well off. We got intersections of pipelines, as Jeffrey Smith mentioned, as long as the natural gas keeps flowing, we'll stay warm. But I mean, all of these things, they take work on the back end. They just don't magically show up. So if it's not addressed, I think we're going to be more unhappy than not in the long term or even the short term, frankly. So thank you for bringing up those points.
You're welcome, sir. Have a good day.
Yeah, appreciate it. You know, we're going to have to leave it there for today because we are about out of time here for this program. So everyone who did comment, call in, participate in the show, we thank you for doing so. We'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 5 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM with more delving into the issues that affect us here in the borderland, probably some more of the local ones as well. So all of this discussion, I think, is important. And again, we got just some of the previous stuff that we're working on for you. We have got things including other candidates that are going to be on both of those local and statewide ballot issues, more of the discussion of some of those local votes outside of the ballot box with local officials having gone on recently. All of that and more definitely on the docket for future and maybe even sooner rather than later to be announced shows here for Talk El Paso. Otherwise, I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Really, I do thank you all for calling, commenting, participating in the show. You all are what makes this work, because I guess I don't like it when shows just kind of preach at you. I like to have that discussion, really get into the nitty-gritty, and that's what we'll do, 4 to 5 p.m. So stay safe out there, those for motorcycles when on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. See you tomorrow. Now for another Medicare moment with Eric with Advocate Health Advisors. Will enrolling in a Medicare Advantage plan interfere with VA benefits or care?
Generally, no. So in addition to the great care a veteran receives at the VA, a Medicare Advantage plan will just add another layer of health care, and it's delivered through a civilian network to the veteran so they can use that in conjunction with their VA care. This will produce a comprehensive health care coverage plan that provides additional care at low and oftentimes no cost to the veteran. This coverage in no way, let me repeat that, this coverage in no way replaces VA care. It only adds to the benefits the veterans currently have through their military.
So if you got any more questions or for more info, call Eric, your local advisor, wherever you're hearing this broadcast at 1-800-876-0214. That's 1-800-876-0214.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch out for an accident on Yarborough Drive, just north of Edgemere Boulevard. Also, there's a medical emergency that could cause some delays on Dyer Street northbound at Gateway Boulevard. And there's also some construction that has the roadway reduced to 2 lanes on Gateway Boulevard northbound between Kenworthy and Sean Haggerty Drive. I'm Marae Jourdain, and that's traffic.
Want to make a difference?